Hello everyone, welcome to Inside the Americas. Here's a look at today's show. The Kilauea volcano in Hawaii erupts for a fourth week in a row, with risk now of volcanic glass fibers injuring eyes and lungs. Starbucks shuts down almost all its U.S. stores for an afternoon of anti-bias training, created after the arrest of two black men in a Philadelphia store. And the mayor of California's chic Santa Barbara makes parking spaces available to people struggling so much with poverty, they're now living in their cars. I'm Jeannie Godula. First, our picture of the week. Lava running down the sides of the Kilauea volcano on Hawaii's Big Island. And this now for the fourth week in a row. The fast-moving lava has now forced part of a highway to close. And there's a new risk of thin strands of volcanic glass fibers in the wind that could hurt eyes and lungs. More and more people are being forced to evacuate, with lava destroying at least 80 homes so far.
At the end of the street, the spewing lava. This resident evacuated her home 3 weeks ago. Her neighbor's house has disappeared.
Here. Well, that was a house. I was standing here and it was engulfed, but then I'm thinking,
how long ago?
Hour and a half maybe.
Could you imagine that it could happen to you?
No, are you kidding? Like never in a lifetime. Never, ever. I mean, none of us.
Inch by inch, the molten rock advances through the streets. A little further down, a huge flow blocks the road.
Terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I just can't believe it, really. It doesn't seem real.
Yeah, thinking of it as just a force of nature as opposed to a threat makes it a lot easier to understand.
Residents finally decide it's time to leave.
That was like a reality check for us. Now it seems like, it's not if we're going to go, it's when.
The Kilauea volcano has destroyed more than 80 buildings so far. We are not allowed to enter the zones that have been evacuated. So we discreetly enter the area with one of the residents. He's returning home to recover some of his belongings.
It's like an enemy that, an angry neighbor that you don't know when they're going to snap on you, that you just take your chances living on the edge,
His house has been destroyed twice by the volcano, and yesterday his son's house was engulfed by the lava. Closer to the sea, we can see clouds of steam, resulting from the two flows of lava that made their way to the ocean, emitting a toxic gas into the atmosphere. About 2,000 residents have already fled, and according to scientists, there's no way of knowing how long the volcanic activity will last.
Colombia voted this week in the first presidential election since the signing of the 2016 deal to end more than 5 decades of conflict with the FARC. But the outcome has left the country even more divided. Colombia is now facing a bitter runoff between two presidential candidates with polarizing positions. In order to win in June, both conservative former Senator Iván Duque and one-time guerrilla leftist Gustavo Petro need to sway some of the more than 6 million voters who lie somewhere in the middle, many of whom dread the thought of voting for either one. Our number of the week now is 8,000 Starbucks branches that shut down for one afternoon this week to get their employees to talk about race. The anti-bias training session came after two black men were arrested at a Starbucks in Philadelphia when they were waiting to meet a friend. Black leaders advising Starbucks on the training say they hope it will reinvigorate decades-old efforts to ensure equal treatment for all.
I feel like I'm disturbing people by just being there.
This is an excerpt from the video shown to 175,000 Starbucks employees on Tuesday, an introduction to the topic before discussing racial bias. The training session lasted 4 hours, during which 8,000 coffee shops owned by the company across the country were closed. A productive meeting, according to some of the employees.
I may have worked with some people for 10 years, and there were things about them I didn't know. And to really hear about what their experiences are every day, and their experiences that I don't have and that I probably could never really understand, but to be able to hear about it and to think, how can I be a part of making this better?
To put yourself in someone else's shoes in order to generate questions and thoughts. That's the goal of Starbucks executives. They announced the initiative in mid-April, following the arrest of 2 black men in a Philadelphia Starbucks cafe. The men had asked to use the restroom while waiting for a friend of theirs to arrive in the shop and order. The incident was filmed by a customer and broadcast online. It caused an uproar in the US, illustrating once more the discrimination that many African Americans still face. Starbucks offered multiple apologies before launching this training proposal.
Because we understand that racial and systemic bias have many causes, sources, and ways of showing up within each of us.
We all have unconscious bias. And I think we're living at a time in America where there is a fracturing of humanity. And we have an opportunity, given the fact that we have stores in every community in America, to begin a very important conversation.
Not everyone, though, is convinced that the measure is enough to change the situation.
Well, I study education policy, and I know that one-day workshops don't really do anything, so I'm not sure if there's a more comprehensive plan, but it seems more like a public relations effort than something more meaningful.
The reaction from Starbucks is almost unprecedented, and some see it as a sincere attempt to deal with racial bias.
The challenge with unconscious bias is we don't see ourselves when we're being biased as biased, very little of the time. And making something a priority is definitely the first step to culture change as well as individual behavior change.
Many are hoping that Starbucks will serve as an example to other companies, urging them to increase training on racial discrimination and match the progress made fighting sexual harassment.
Also in the U.S. this week, a racist tweet from comedian Roseanne Barr pushed ABC to cancel her hit TV show. That tweet insulting former Obama advisor Valerie Jarrett got the reboot of the show Roseanne pulled off the air. ABC's president calling the comments that Jarrett was an offspring of the Muslim Brotherhood and the Planet of the Apes repugnant. Roseanne was ABC's biggest hit of the season, particularly among conservatives, as the main character and Barr herself are big supporters of Donald Trump. Roseanne Barr apologized on Twitter to those who lost their jobs because of the cancellation and expressed remorse she was being branded a racist. Here's what Valerie Jarrett, the woman she targeted in the tweet, had to say.
I think we have to turn it into a teaching moment. I'm fine. I'm worried about all the people out there who don't have a circle of friends and followers who come right to their defense.
Next, poverty is on the rise in America, and as more and more people are having trouble making ends meet, some of them have decided to give up one of their biggest living expenses, their homes. Instead of sleeping in the streets, though, many of them are now choosing to live in their cars. Here's our report from the wealthy California city of Santa Barbara, where the mayor is opening up parking spaces to give them at least some semblance of home. Shona Bhattacharya reports.
At nightfall, these vehicles come out of the shadows. They're part of a new sector of the population, people who have no address but are not homeless. Their home is their vehicle. 40% of them have a job, a proportion that's on the rise. Among them is Danielle, 46 years old, and her daughter, who was too ashamed to speak to the camera. With her daughter in the front seat, Danielle is in the back, on a plank and a mattress.
Isn't it too hard to live like this?
Yeah, it is, especially someone my age. How much I make monthly? About $2,000. It's not enough. Not enough for even to rent a room.
They own a comforter, a small table, and some clothes. Danielle works part-time in an office, and with her meager salary, she makes too much money to qualify for benefits. In hopes of a better future, she invests her money in tuition and saves on housing.
The choice is to keep living on the cliff, keep living on the edge, or go back to school, get a degree, and better my opportunities. You know, get a better job, a better paying job, more stable job.
Danielle was an accountant for years before losing her job in 2012. She's been on the road for the past 5 years. Like more and more Americans, she lives on the margins of society while presenting an image of normalcy.
If you saw me on the street, would you think that I was homeless? No. I'm clean, I shower, you know, I work, I go to school, I take care of, you know, my life the best I can. I just live in a car.
California is going through a housing crisis. Rents are rising, but salaries are stagnating. The wait for social housing is 7 years on average. The trendy city of Santa Barbara has come up with a solution of sorts. It offers free parking spaces for people to spend the night.
Santa Barbara has many programs to house people. The population and the need for such programs outweighs the supply.
Dale Murnane lived in a rented house until a tragic event changed everything. A deadly mudslide devastated her neighborhood and her home 6 months ago.
It's despicable. I've been a professional my whole life. I've had a bank account, I still do. It's shocking how alone we all are in this.
The 64-year-old used to be a dental hygienist. She also ran an alternative healthcare business that went bankrupt.
I feel catapulted out of the world that I lived in and surviving well with a lot of peace in my heart, but with no direction. This is a super comfy bed, no complaints. I'm at home here, having a small home again. I get very peaceful and happy, but I don't see it yet.
30% of people living in vehicles are older than 50. It's officially illegal to sleep in one's car in the United States, but it's unlikely the practice will stop anytime soon.
We'll wrap up now in Bolivia with a mashup best described as folk metal. It's a blend of traditional music from singer Luzmila Carpio with the heavy sounds of the group Alcohólica LC. The song, in the indigenous language Quechua, is meant to defend women's rights. We'll leave you with that. Thanks so much for watching Inside the Americas. See you again soon.
Across Africa, presented by Georgia Calvin-Smith.
From North to South Africa, from Bamako to Nairobi, from Accra to Mogadishu. Bringing you all the political, economic, cultural and social news from Africa for a better insight into an ever-changing continent.
Across Africa on France 24 and France24.com.